And we're live on the air. Hello, friends. Welcome to another Codementor Office Hours. My name is Mark from Codementor. And if this is your first time joining an Office Hours, basically what we do is get together online with some tech experts that we're big fans of and try to do a deep dive on a specific technology or a specific sort of style of working that maybe isn't getting a lot of coverage or is troubling a lot of people. And we try to get a lot of clarity if we can. And so just a little housekeeping if it's your first time joining us. If you're watching live right now, there's a group chat window in the live room with us that you're welcome to throw questions into. If you're watching this from the Google Plus live broadcast, looks like there's a few people there. There's a Q&A app that you can use, and we'll be collecting questions the whole time and hit as many as we can towards the end. This is also being live recorded to the Codementor YouTube channel, so if you find yourself trying to take a lot of notes and you miss something, don't worry, you can always go back and watch the recording. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce today's guest, which is Balint Erdi. Balint is an Ember.js and Rails consultant, and more recently the author of the Rock and Roll with Ember.js book. His book guides people through the steps of building an Ember app so that you can see how the concepts are applied in practice. Today, he's going to show us how query parameters can be used with some practical examples. So please welcome Balint.
Hey, Mark, thank you for the introduction. So yes, the format of this presentation there's going to be like a classical presentation, and then I'm going to show you like a real world example. Actually, this is going to be the example that I also use in the book, how to apply query parameters there. So without further ado, let's do that. Yeah. Everybody's seeing my screen, right? I mean, Mark, you're seeing my screen, so.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, cool. So query params, just so to make sure that we are on the same page, is you have a URL and you want to pass some more information, but not in the path, the URL path, but like you put a question mark and then you have these key value pairs. These are what's called query params. So I'm going to talk about the past, the present, and the future of query params in Ember. The past, it's quite interesting that for a lot of time, Ember didn't have query param support. So actually, it was in 2013. There was a first European Ember conference which I attended. It was in Munich. That's the city that you can see on this slide. And that was the first. There was a presentation I remember very vividly about query params in Ember. That's when they tried to introduce it to Ember, but it didn't make it to the 1.0 version, which came out the day after that presentation, because it wasn't really well fleshed out. So there were some issues. There were a lot of things that they had to get right, and so they weren't confident enough that that's the final version that they want query params to be. So that didn't make the 1.0. Query params didn't make the 1.0. Fast forward 1 year, when Emberfest, the European Ember conference, was in Barcelona, I also attended, and that's exactly when query params finally landed. So that was a version 1.7, and it was mostly implemented. That version that finally made it into Ember was implemented by Alex Mechnier, who is also known as Mr. Router. So he implemented a lot of Ember's router. And so finally, query params were stabilized and made it into the stable version. So yeah, we arrived at the present state. Ember is now at 1.12, the 1.12 stable version. And there hasn't been really any changes from 1.7 to 1.10 regarding query params. So let's now turn to a practical example and see how that works. I'm going to switch over here. Terminal. Are the fonts big enough so that they can be seen on the screen?
Yeah, it looks okay. It looks okay to me.
Okay. Yeah. So here I have, this is an Ember CLI application. So again, in 2 sentences, Ember CLI is now the de facto standard way to build Ember applications. It's really very, very, very good. It's it's a fascinating way to build front-end applications. So now I'm running my application on port 4200, and if we switch over here, you can see that this is the rock and roll application. A few words about what that does. You have the bands on the left, very simple, and then for each band you might have a description under details, and you have a list of songs for that particular band. And at first we don't have any query params, so the idea is that I will gradually add query params, and at each point I'm going to make it a bit more. I'm going to like show a feature of query params that you can add. So stage 0, no query params whatsoever. You can just, by clicking these buttons, you can change the sorting criteria by title and ascending and descending. And if you type something in, then the list is filtered right away. And only the songs that match the string that you gave will make it there, will stay in the list. So how does that work? So on the left, I have the controller, which is the context of the template. And on the right, I have the template itself. You can see that the buttons are here, the 4 buttons. And so if you click on the button, this action helper will trigger the set sorting action with, in this case, rating desk as the parameter. And the controller will catch that action, will handle that action, and what it does is that it just sets the sort by property of that controller to the option passed in. So in this case, it will sort, it will set the sort by property to rating desk. And if we go up, then you can see here that the sort by property is what determines the value of the sort properties property, and that's what determines what order the songs are sorted in. So it's like a 2-step process. As one property changes, then it changes the next one, and it changes finally the sorted songs array, which is the list of songs that you saw on the right on my screen. And the matching songs is a property that takes care of only showing the filtered list. So you can see the sorted songs, which finally gets rendered onto screen, takes matching songs and sorts it according to sort properties. A lot of variable names in my explanation, but I guess you got the point. Okay, so that's how it works. Now let's add query params. See that Ember CLI just reloads it right away, builds the whole app. Okay, it came down. It took a while to fetch the data, but it came back. Okay, now let's see if I start to change stuff. Then you can see that now we have the query params in the URL. And of course, that's quite paramount for any backend application. You get used to this on the backend, that you can just reproduce the state your application was in. If I now reload the whole application, then I will have the same state as before. So the songs are rated in ascending order of their title, and you have the D as a search criteria. So while before we just lost the state, we no longer do that. Okay, so stage 1, we have query params. So far, so good. Let's say, which is I think quite a common need, that okay, let's say that the controller property has to be sorted by, because we want descriptive names in our application, but in the URL we like brevity, so we prefer short names. That's not really a problem. I changed the array to be a JavaScript object, and for sort by I just want to use S, and for search term I want to use Q. Let's delete what we had before. Okay, and now when I still have that one. Okay, because I haven't saved my application. So now the sort by was abbreviated to just S, and for search criteria, it's just a Q. Okay, so stage 2, we have shorter variable names. Shorter query param names in the URL. So that's it on the controller side. Now we turn to routes, because routes have a few more query param related features. So I just open the, oh yeah, one thing before we turn to routes, we now actually can get rid of the buttons and just replace them by simple links. So I'm going to cheat a little bit because I don't want to write it out live. So replace the buttons with links. Ember has this link to helper, which transitions to a route name. So usually we are on the band songs route, so I can say I want to transition to the same route. And this is where the query params are defined. So if I want to change any query params, then I just use the query params sub-expression, it's called. Say that the query params in this case should be sort by equals rating desk. So with the button, I change this sort by through an action, if you remember, to rating desk. Now I don't have to do it anymore because I just pass it needed query params. And the nice thing that Ember has is that if the route doesn't change, then I don't need that, the first parameter, because I'm already on the band songs route. Okay, so did I save it this time? Yep. So now you can see that what has changed is that these are now links. And so if you hover over them, you can also see, of course, if I go there, then you can no longer see, but you can see in the left bottom corner how the URLs change. So that's a minor thing, but it's still nice, I think. And we can also get rid of that action now, so we have less code. Now we can go to the route. So it's the band songs route. And the model hook is where the data for that template gets fetched. So in our case, we already have the band from a parent route, and we just take the songs and make it the model of the template. And I'm explaining this because I'm going to do something with the model hook. So in the same way, I have to define an outer key, query params, and then the name of the query param. Let's say search term. So let's say that the scenario is that I don't want to search songs on the client side. I have a third-party service, let's say Elasticsearch, that I want to use for searching the songs. So I need to make a request to the backend. In other words, I need to recall the model hook. So I need to make this be called again so that I can just send a request to the server, and whatever the server returns is going to be the new list. So what I want is that I specify that the search term, whenever the search term changes, I want to refresh the model. Yeah, and to be able to see that it really happens, the model hook receives the params, the parameters of that segment of the URL, and I just print it out. So yeah, I need to open the console, and you can see that the params, yes, so the search term is D, sort by is rating desk, which is cool. And if I now change the search term, then I expect the model hook to be called, and again, the parameters to be printed out to the console. It doesn't, and the reason, and I stumbled into this while I was like rehearsing this. is that here you don't need the name of the control property, but you need the name that you abbreviated it to. So in this case, we need to put Q here. I think it still catches me a lot of times. But yeah, if you now change it, you can see that every time the mother hook, the model hook gets called. So yeah, that works too. One more thing, and then I think we are done, is not search, S. So I want the sort by to replace true. What that does is that every time, let me comment it out so you can see the previous state. Every time that you change one of the query params, a new item is added to the browser's history. And you can verify that if you go back and forth, you can see that it did in this. So the browser saved your changes as separate items. If you don't want that, for example, you are browsing through a photo gallery and you want the back button to go back to really before opening the photo gallery, then you can specify replace true for that query param. What that does is that whenever the whenever the sort by option changes, then you don't want a new history item in the browser. You want the previous one replaced. So let's verify that by opening our application on bands, then going to Pergem. And then, so if I click around and then I go back, then it went back to where I came from, to the songs route, so to details. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we went through all the options that you can pass to query params. And now let's go back to the presentation, because you might be aware that controllers are completely going away in one of the 2.x versions. So finally, they will not go away in a 2.0 release, but a little bit later. By the way, the first 2.0 beta is coming out on June 12th, so in a few days, but it will take 6 more weeks for the 2.0 release to be stable. And so you're still going to have the same behavior for query params in that stable release, but they want to get rid of controllers altogether in probably 2.1 or 2.2, which is, again, 6 weeks after that. So possibly by early fall, you will not have controllers anymore in your Ember applications. But most of the functionality we saw resides on controllers. So how would that look like? And there is already an open pull request for Ember, which moves everything to the routes, because routes are here to stay. So you have this as key, which we used. For example, for the search term we used Q, so that would be as Q. And yeah, the default value too. Yeah, that I didn't explicitly say, but what I put here is the default value for the query params. And what it does is that if the query param has this value, then it will simply not add it to the URL. And that makes a lot of sense, because you don't want, for example, when you arrive at the page, you don't want query params to appear right away. So this is what the default value will do. And there are a few more, like refresh model and replace. We also saw there are 2 more things that will be added to query params. So yes, I think basically the functionality will stay the same. It will just be shifted to the routes. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The application I used is the rack and roll applications, which is also in my book. And thank you very much for your attention and for your interest in query params. And yeah, I think, Mark, if you still have time, then and if there are any questions, then I would be glad to answer them.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, if anyone has any questions from the live broadcast page, feel free to use the Q&A app. Send those in. To get them started, I mean, can you tell us a bit more about the Rock and Roll with Ember.js book that's coming out?
Yeah, sure. So it has already come out. I launched it in February. And the main idea behind the book, well, there are two main ideas, I would think. I think that the best way to teach Ember and probably a lot of other things is that if to limit the amount of new information, and that's like a guiding principle that I wrote the book on. So, for example, first I tell you about templates and data bindings. We just take a very simple template, a list of bands, we show it. The reader understands how that works. Then we move on to something different. Let's say routes. Yes, routes are really important. We are going to just create one route and see how that works. And so each chapter brings a new Ember building block, but we use that Ember building block to build something meaningful. So on the example of the query params, we want to add sorting and searching to our list of songs, and we want it in a way that persists across sessions, across those the apps. So what's the Ember building block that we should use? Well, query params, and that's the whole idea that goes through the book. The other idea, which is less technical, is that Ember changes very fast, and if I just release the book in February, like a lot of the functionality and the semantics would no longer be relevant, for example, at the end of this summer. So I constantly keep it up to date. And it's not just that I don't use deprecated features, but I also use new features, and I write idiomatic Ember code.
Gotcha. What are the, specifically focusing on the query parameters, I mean, from what you've seen, what are the most common kind of like fallacies and pitfalls that a lot of project owners run into when it comes to query parameters?
I think the main one is what I also mentioned in the presentation, that, and it trips me up too, that in the routes you should use the name, you should use a short name. If you have given a short name to a query param, then that's what you should use. And it's quite deceiving, because even the params that I printed out to the console, so the params that are passed to the model hook, they contain the property name on the controller. So it will say search term, but you have to use Q to configure your query params on the route. I'm actually not sure if this will go away with the refactoring, with the pull request that I showed you at the end. It might, and it will be a huge improvement, I think. I haven't really come across other pitfalls. I think it's quite. Oh yeah, there is one more thing. The replace true that I showed you. It only works if the transition. So the transition is when the router goes from one URL to the next. For example, if you clicked one of the sorting buttons, that counts as a transition because the query params change. So you technically go to another URL. That's a transition. So this replace true parameter only works if the transition is purely a query param transition. So, for example, it will not work for when you refresh the model. So when I changed the search term and then refresh the model hook, that counts as a full transition, not just a query params only transition. So there will be no way to tell the browser not to replace the old history item. So yeah, that's definitely another pitfall.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, it looks like we don't have any other questions coming in right now, but basically what we'll do is I'll email everyone who's RSVP'd a link to the recording, and also to Balint's information. And if you have any questions while watching the presentation, definitely feel free to reach out. That's cool with you, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And what other resources do you recommend people check out to keep learning about this? Yeah, besides your book.
Yeah. So the Ember guides is quite good on query params. I checked it out. It's quite, I mean, I think it covers basically everything, but these quirks, these pitfalls that I told you about, it doesn't speak about that. But otherwise, it's a really good resource to learn. Specifically about query params, there aren't there. I think there aren't that many resources.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the more important to talk about it in a context like
Yeah.
this. So, yeah, well, Balint, thank you so much for your time, and for everyone watching, whether it's on the recording or right now. Thanks for checking out Office Hours, and we have some more coming up. And again, I'll link to Balint's information and to the recording. But thanks so much for tuning in.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.